All right, so this is the last um, lecture for the forensic class for the summer. I'm going to do modules 10 and 11. And next class, there's no new material. I'll just be here to answer some questions. And I should be able to be physically on campus on that time. My Tuesday class is not going to meet on Tuesday. I thought that would be possible, but it turned out there's a time conflict I hadn't anticipated, so I'll be trapped at that time doing a corporate training. So if you're in the Tuesday class, the only way to get help will be to come to one of my Saturday classes. And this class is online only because there's no power on City College campus, so we can't meet in the science building. So the only thing we have is the online Twitch stuff. So let's look at lecture 10. All right, so if you want to analyze an app, a mobile app, you can do it just like malware. You can do static or dynamic analysis. Static analysis is where you look at the code without running it, or the artifacts of the app, and typically what you look at is stored data. It has SQLite databases, which is a very simple database system that stores all your data in a single file, and this is where most apps store things like your instant messages, your emails, and everything else they create. Another thing you can do is examine the code. In the Android manifest, you'll see all the permissions it has, like access to the internet, read contacts, and so on, read the GPS. That's one way to analyze what apps do. And another way is dynamic analysis, where you install the app in a phone, run it, and then monitor the behavior of the phone, the network traffic, the processes launched, the files created, and so on. And so you can use Wireshark as one of the many ways to examine the network traffic. So they point out if you have Tinder, a dating app, they were able to watch the domains associated with it. So your Tinder contacted all these different servers, and you can then ask what are they doing with those servers and how many of them are getting copies of your data and so on. You can find out where the user data is being stored. I've done this a lot of times. One thing I've done hundreds of times is make an account with an app, click whatever button to remember who I am, and then see if it actually saved my password on the phone, and about half of the time it has, which is a poor practice. All right. Here's another flaw with Tinder a long time. It showed the location of people in close proximity, and this has been a privacy issue with Tinder. I'm not sure if it's really been addressed, but over the last several years there have been a lot of exposures that Tinder leaks out your location to other Tinder users in a way that you probably don't want. All right, yeah, you can contain precise information about users' communication in the vicinity, so it seems like you could pretty easily stalk someone's physical location with this thing. And here's the kind of data it stores in their SQL database. So anyway, there's a couple ways to analyze a app. And in the next section here, we'll talk about photographs. One big issue in computer crime with photographs is child pornography. This was the #1 FBI priority for years. I think now it's been replaced by terrorism. But anyway, it's a really big issue. There's various big organizations to fight this. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is one of them, and Project Vic is a collaboration between domestic and international law enforcement and private sector partners trying to rescue child abuse victims and apprehend sex offenders. It's a big issue. So here's a woman that and photographs can be enormously helpful in solving computer crime cases. There's a woman who killed her friend, lied about it, but then they found a selfie where she was wearing a belt that had been taken off the victim. So it sort of had that kind of clue to show that she was in fact the murderer. And there was a guy here that took pictures of himself abusing a child in a bathroom, and they were able to identify a prescription medication bottle and identify him that way. There are laws being passed about revenge porn, which are certainly getting headlines now. That Marjorie Taylor Greene a few days ago put a bunch of naked pictures of Hunter Biden in Congress publicly and emailed them to all kinds of people, and it may turn out that she has actually violated these revenge porn laws. Maybe it'll do something to punish her for that tasteless act and possibly criminal act. Anyway, technically, digital photographs are computer files, and there's various systems developed to store them. You see this DCIM as the root directory in digital cameras. That's the standard directory name used there. And you can do a lot with these. One big issue these days is facial recognition. There are tools that scan the internet to get pictures of everybody, tie it to their name, and then use this to identify people for law enforcement and other purposes. It's highly controversial because it's arguably an invasion of privacy, and the tools don't work very well. They often misidentify people, so people are getting arrested based on this evidence when it's the wrong person, because the facial recognition tools are just not very accurate, especially against people of color. They work better for white people because I think there's just more white pictures of white people that are trained on more on white people. But anyway, for whatever reason, they are racist in addition to being inaccurate. So there's many online services like Flickr, Instagram, and Facebook that floods the internet with tons of pictures of people and associated with their names, so the information is certainly available to make a database identifying faces and names. And then there's Snapchat, which was intended to improve user privacy, where you could send someone a picture and that picture will vanish after a few seconds. But of course, that's not really true. Now, to be fair, this is probably okay, in that most people just use an app as it's designed. And if the app is used as it's designed, you only get to view a picture briefly and then it vanishes. But of course, you could take a screenshot. You could take a camera and photograph the screen. It can't really prove to you that the image is gone. And from a forensic standpoint, images are still on the user's device after uploading. So, you could argue that Snapchat's claim that this picture is going to vanish is not absolutely true. Although, if I was their lawyer, I would say, well, it's true in most cases. Anyway, this is related to the other issue that hit the news this week of how are we going to identify artificial intelligence art. And the standard that Biden got the companies to agree to a few days ago, the companies that make, like the top 7 companies that make AI image generators, have agreed to add a watermark to the images they generate, so it'll say created by Stable Diffusion or whatever the tool is. And you can say, well, there will be other image generators that don't put that mark on, and that's true, but if most of the big providers put it on, I think that does address most of the problem. Then most of the images you'll see in practice will probably have the watermark, and we will be able to usually identify if something's generated by an AI. So, you don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. Some kind of security solution that offers some benefit is probably worth something, even if it's not perfect. And Snapchat is not perfect, but I would imagine that if you send selfies with Snapchat, the number of those selfies that are retained somewhere later is decreased compared to putting them on Facebook. Anyway, so a raster graphic is a grid of pixels. This is typically what you have. It's tied to a certain resolution, so many pixels by so many other pixels, and you can store it uncompressed, which is what bitmaps are, but then the file gets very big, and there's really no need for that. You could at least zip it with ideal compression that doesn't lose anything, and that's what a GIF is. Or you could use JPEG. JPEG actually degrades the image by removing the details which are probably not visible to the human eye anyway. That's the idea, so it makes the image as small as possible. Anyway, all these are encodings of the raster graphics. Now there are also vector images, which have a mathematical expression of lines and curves, and therefore they're not particularly good for a realistic photographic scene, but they're very good for cartoons or logos or things like that that really are just mathematical curves. And then the file is much smaller than a raster graphic would be, and you can resize it, and it stays at top precision at every resizing because your graphics card just recalculates the lines and curves. All right. Thumbnail images are created by operating systems, certainly the Windows and Mac operating systems, so that they can have a little picture when you're looking at a directory of images, and often recovering those thumbnails is useful forensically. Then there's the issue of evidence admissibility. Photographic images can be regarded as an original if they can be proven to be accurate. You can also do things. Here's an example Interpol had. This guy did something horrible like child abuse, and he chose to hide his identity by swirling his face in some tool like Photoshop. But since this is not done with like oil and a brush, it's digitally done, they were able to undo it and get a good enough picture of his face so they could arrest him. So that's the problem with these online redaction tools, where you modify some digital file, and this happens with Word documents and PDFs. If you try to remove data from those, cover it up, very often it turns out you're not actually removing it, you're just adding another mark that can be removed. So you think you're sending a redacted document, but you're really sending the unredacted document if somebody applies forensic techniques to that file. A very common flaw. All right, let's take a look at Lecture 11, which is here, which is Mac Forensics. Oh, we should do a Kahoot for Lecture 10. Let's do that. And then I'll probably make a separate video of Lecture 11. I suppose that might be more professional. All right, library, favorites, it is Mod 10. All right. All right, I guess that's enough. Okay, what technology stores data in mobile apps? SQLite. All right. All right. What organization includes private and law enforcement? All right, that's Project Vic. What company made misleading claims that the image would vanish quickly? Yep, that's Snapchat, of course. All right. And which one is a lossy image format? That's JPEG. JPEG is the one that blurs the image. All right. I've recorded the winners. Okay, so I'm going to stop this recording.